Welcome everyone to the Mr. Ghost YouTube channel. I am Russell. I hope you all are doing well and are in good spirits. I hope you will enjoy today's episode. Anyway, without further ado, let's get straight to the event. One of our listeners has sent us a real ghost story via email. Let's listen to it. I will read it as he has written. He wrote, "I want to share the story." Russell, I am Shawan from Jessore, Bangladesh. This is my first story sent to you, and since this is my first story, if my writing is a bit disorganized, please correct it. Without further ado, I will start with my story. My house is in a village in Jessore, and I study at a private university in Dhaka. Since the university was closed, I was at home. When the university reopened, I booked a bus ticket to return to Dhaka. My bus was scheduled for 10:15 p.m., and it had started raining heavily since noon that day. My house is about 8 kilometers from the bus stand. After evening, when the rain stopped a bit, I left my house. I took a van from New House to the next market, and from there I had to take a small vehicle to the stand. Just as I reached the market, it started raining again, so I ran to the porch of a closed shop. In that shop, in one corner, an elderly man was sitting on a stool, and he asked me in a hoarse voice when he saw my headphones, "Boy, what are you listening to?" I replied, "I am listening to ghost stories." I talked with the uncle for a while, and then he paused and said, "You boys of this generation are making fun of these things. That's not right." Hearing such words from the uncle, I asked him if something had happened to him. Immediately, I noticed that Raja uncle's eyes were watery. After a moment, he said, "My father died because of a bad spirit. Since I had more time until my bus and the rain had not stopped, I asked Uncle Rajak to share the story." Uncle Rajak started telling. He said in our regional language, but I am writing in my own way for the audience's understanding. "Brother Russell, the places mentioned in Rajak Uncle's story are familiar to me as they are near my house. Uncle Rajak said it was many years ago when I was around 14 or 15 years old. My father used to farm in the fields, and he often took me with him for work. One afternoon, we were working in the rice field. Let me mention that our village was in the middle of the fields, and a road cut through the fields leading to this market. Our plot was quite far away. Suddenly, my father said to me, "Rajak, go home and bring a few buckets of salt. You may know that salt is used in rice fields for various reasons." So I headed straight home. It took me quite a while to walk back, around an hour. It was getting dark because the sky was cloudy, and by around 5 o'clock, it was almost dark. Let me mention that when we went to work in the fields at night, we would take food and a hurricane lamp or some light source, which we kept next to our makeshift hut. That day, we did not go to work at night, so we did not take any light. I set off with the bucket of salt, and it was already quite dark by the time I reached home. So, I decided to walk through the fields instead of the path. Just before reaching our plot, I called out loudly for my father. He answered slowly, and the sound came from a few plots to my left. But I could recognize our plot by seeing our makeshift hut, as it was built right along the edge of our field. The sound came from the plot of Shadru Uncle, who had died just 7 days ago. Shadru Uncle was a Hindu, and I felt suspicious. I called out again, "Father!" But this time there was no response. I walked toward the field without thinking. Even after calling repeatedly, my father did not reply. I searched around our plot and hut, but could not find him. Now I began to feel scared, remembering about Shadru Uncle. I recalled the story of his body being burned because I had seen it when it was dark, and now it was getting late. Without thinking any further, I left the bucket of salt on the path and ran toward Shadru Uncle's plot, because the first faint sound had come from there. As I reached the plot, I heard a whispering laugh. I could not tell if it was a female or male voice. The environment was completely silent, and that whispering laugh chilled my entire body. I mustered up some courage and ran without looking around. I don't know how long I ran through the muddy fields. Suddenly, I stumbled over something and fell. I thought to myself, I must have tripped on the path. I was about to get up and run again when I heard a moaning sound and turned around to see my father's face. I realized I had tripped over my father's body. As I looked at him, I saw only his face visible above the mud, up to his waist. I screamed loudly and fainted. When I opened my eyes, I found myself lying on a bed in my house's porch while my father was lying on the floor next to me. My mother, grandmother, and 2 neighbor uncles, along with my sister, were sitting nearby. My father's feet were being massaged. It was daytime then, and I realized how long I had been unconscious. My entire body was aching, and I had a slight fever. My father also reportedly had a high fever all night. After we had our meal, everyone sat on the porch and began asking us what had happened in the field the previous day. My father, who had almost recovered, began to speak clearly in a fearful tone. When I sent Rajak home for salt and continued working, about 30 minutes later, Shadru called me from his land, which is right next to mine. He explained how they would talk to each other while working in the fields. My rice plants had a salt pest problem, so I was a bit tense. I didn't even remember that Shadru had died 7 days ago. I continued talking to him as usual. In the middle of our conversation, I called him Shadru, and when I said that, I heard a voice from behind me. Where is it? I got scared and turned around to look at his face. That's when I remembered. Oh, Shadru has been dead for 7 days. My eyes widened as I saw him, and his face looked normal. But then he looked into my eyes, and it was as if he understood that I had just realized he was dead. He then slowly began to smile without making any sound. And that smile made my entire body tremble with fear. He continued, Then Shadru, in a mocking tone, asked, "What kind of pest is on your rice?" At that moment, I felt like I would faint. Shadru then said in a soft voice, "Are you afraid?" Many people work in their respective fields after sunset. I tried to scream for them, but no sound came out. When I tried to scream again, Shadru jumped on me and pressed me down into the mud. I don't know how long we struggled like that, but I felt a severe blow, and after that, I lost consciousness. Suddenly, I regained consciousness after Raja kicked my leg and found myself in this state, half buried in mud. Rajak screamed and fainted upon seeing me like this. A moment later, I heard a loud voice from a distance. "Who is screaming?" I recognized that voice. It was Ratan from the neighboring village. I struggled and called out to Ratan. After a while, he came and saw our condition and quickly called a few others from the neighboring field. They took us home. My father stopped here, but I was astonished and said, "I was terrified and ran far away from Shadru Uncle's plot." But the surprising thing is that despite running for so long, I had only reached our plot because my father had buried himself in our field. Anyway, for about 7 or 8 days, we did not go to the field after sunset. Everything returned to normal after that. But after 10 days, my father went to the market to buy some things. It had been raining lightly for about 2 consecutive days, just like today. My father was waiting for the rain to stop in the market. Many villagers were there. When the rain eased up a bit, my father asked them if they were going home, but they said they would leave later. So, my father set off towards home. The field starts just after 2 small villages from the market. A vast field stretches on both sides of the road, and just before reaching our village, there is a cremation ground. The road was extremely muddy, so my father walked slowly. As he walked, he reached near the cremation ground. I had been to that cremation ground many times. At this time, the place seemed very eerie, and I could imagine what it must have been like years ago. Next to the cremation ground is a temple, and there is a tamarind tree. People often throw bricks around that tamarind tree, and a narrow river flows on its right side. As my father approached the cremation ground, he heard a sound. It sounded as if someone was whispering and laughing. It seemed like someone was laughing at him. He thought it might be rats scurrying around, which caused the noise. As he moved a bit forward, someone called out, "Rahim Bhai, what are you carrying in your bag?" The voice was familiar. It was his cousin's voice. Terrified, my father froze. He began to recite prayers and sprinted away, but he fell back a few times. Now the laughter grew louder, and my father realized he might not return home today. From his right side, he could hear multiple whispers of laughter. Hearing the call of a jackal, my father gathered all his strength to stand and run. But suddenly, he saw Shadru Uncle standing in front of him with a decaying, dreadful voice. Upon seeing Shadru, my father ran back. After a few seconds of running, he realized he was right by the spot where the bodies were burned, right by the riverbank. The stench was so overpowering that my father felt he couldn't breathe. Just then, Shadru called out from behind, "Rahim Bhai," and then jumped on my father, wrestling him into the water. At that moment, some villagers were passing by on the road to the market. They heard the sounds of splashing water by the cremation ground and saw my father's bag lying in the mud on the road. They quickly ran to the riverbank and saw my father gasping for air. They pulled him from the water and placed him in front of the temple. Once my father's breathing became somewhat normal, they took him home. When they brought him home, everyone was there: my sister, mother, and grandmother. My father recounted everything that happened, and everyone became worried again, as my father had been speaking nonsensically all night due to fever. He was repeatedly screaming in fear. The next morning, our local religious leader was called. He came home, saw my father, and listened to the entire story. He recited prayers for both me and my father. Then he said he would come back at night with a friend of his who lived a few villages away. He was also an imam and had much experience and reputation in such matters. After the Maghrib prayer, the religious leader and his friend, whose name was Kader, arrived. Kader was wearing a long kurta and pajama and had prayer beads in his hand. We were all sitting on the porch. Kader had already heard the full story from the religious leader. He took my father inside the house and locked the door. He told all of us to stand outside in the yard. About 20 minutes later, my father and the religious leader came out. We all sat together again on the porch. The religious leader said, "A very bad spirit has targeted your father, and that spirit resides in an old tree near our plot." I apologize, Brother Russell, but I couldn't remember the name of the tree that Rajak uncle mentioned. Apparently, my father had planned to cut down that tree with the neighboring plot owners. About a month ago, he had sat beneath that tree, and shortly after that, they cut down the tree. Since then, the spirit has been targeting my father. We all asked Kader why that spirit appeared as Shadru uncle, and if Shadru's death was caused by this spirit. In the meantime, the Isha prayer was called. Kader said, "I still have much to learn. I will return after the prayer to inform you." They left for the mosque. We sat on the porch, and the surroundings were quiet. The sound of the wet insects had stopped. About 10 minutes after the religious leader left, a rustling sound near our house made my chest tighten. In this silence, we suddenly heard that familiar whispering laughter. Everyone heard it. I, my father, mother, and sister suddenly realized that my sister was missing. Then I heard my sister's voice from the roof of our house. We quickly went outside to see her sitting on the roof, looking at us and laughing. That laugh froze my entire body. My mother, sensing something was wrong, started crying uncontrollably. My father told my sister to come down, but my sister In the voice of an unfamiliar boy, said, "Rahim, I will kill you and stay in your house from now on." Immediately, that terrifying laughter erupted, and my father, seeing my sister in this condition, cried out, "If I have done anything wrong, kill me, but let my daughter go." Just then, the religious leader and Kader arrived at our house. As soon as they came, my sister jumped to the back of the house. Kader and my father ran to the back of the house, and together they managed to bring my sister back inside. The religious leader and Kader sat my sister on the porch. They struggled to restrain my sister, who was of the same age as me. The religious leader quickly poured some water and sprinkled it on my sister, which made her weaken. Then Kader sat my sister on the porch and told us all to go into the yard. From the yard, we saw the religious leader and my sister talking, but we couldn't hear what they were saying. After about 10 minutes, I saw my sister faint immediately. The religious leader called us over and said there is no need to worry anymore about my sister. Kader then said, "You had questions about why the spirit appears as Shadru, and if this spirit is responsible for his death." The religious leader explained that the spirit had no hand in Shadru's death. It had taken on his appearance because your father, Rahim Mia, used to see Shadru from that tree. The spirit chose Shadru's recently deceased face to frighten your father and kill him. The spirit had aimed to kill your father every time. The religious leader said he had imprisoned the spirit through his prayers. He did not reveal how he did it. After explaining everything, the imam and the religious leader left. We were all very frightened, and everything returned to normal. We almost forgot about the incident. 7 or 8 months later, my father went to the fields to check on the rice plants. We were still cultivating rice in our field, and it had been drizzling for 3 or 4 days, even though it wasn't the rainy season. After the Isha prayer, when my father didn't return home, we all began to worry. My father hadn't gone to work in the field. He had only gone to check on the crop. Why was he taking so long? But. Then, my mother told a neighbor to go to the field and check. One of us went along with her. We set off for the fields and reached near our plot after about 30 minutes. But we couldn't see anyone. We all started calling for my father, but there was no response. Suddenly, our eyes fell on the rice field, and we saw my father's head peeking out. We all ran over and found my father buried up to his chest in the mud. None of us knew what to do, and we began to cry. One person ran straight home to inform the village. I was crying uncontrollably, and the uncle accompanying me said my father was gone. After a while, many villagers came to the field together. They all lifted my father's body. This is how this dark chapter ended. At that moment, one question lingered in our minds. The religious leader had said the spirit had been imprisoned. So why did my father die like this? As I spoke, Rajak Uncle's eyes filled with tears. I comforted him by placing my hand on his shoulder. Once he calmed down, I asked Rajak Uncle if I could share his story on Mr. Ghost. Rajak Uncle had no objections, so I shared the story under a pseudonym. Due to lack of time, Rajak Uncle had summarized the story for me by then, and the rain had stopped. After that, I saluted Rajak Uncle and set off for my destination, wishing for the long life of Mr. Ghost. This is where my story ends. If it gets selected, please let me know. Thank you very much for sending your story. I will say one thing. You used pseudonyms for the names, which is why I couldn't understand them at first. I read Shadru and then realized it was Nazrul or Nasarudal, and you said this is a Hindu name. Anyway, you used all pseudonyms for the names. It's good that you might have used fictitious names for the places as well. Anyway, thank you for sending the story. And this incident is indeed very strange, but it ended with a tragic outcome, which is very unfortunate for all of us. We pray for the peace of his soul. May Allah forgive him and keep him in peace. Thank you very much for being with us. Why do you come every night? Dead people should not exist in this world. Go away! Go away!
I just want to be with you.
Mr. Ghost, whether to believe or not is up to you.